guess the most challenging thing when you're building a train is to get the gauge right. In other words, the distance between the wheels. It's really going to match the track. If it doesn't match the track, it's not going to work. So you start with one motor. It only needs to go straight ahead. So one motor's enough because it just needs to go round and round. Like a normal train, the wheels just go in one direction and that really turn. I've tried adding an axle to both sides and then holding the wheels on with a small piece that will stop it from falling off. So you've got to put a wheel on each side, and sometimes you use a bit of the small piece just to crease the gap on one side because there is a circular piece on one side. So you try and even it out a bit, and so it sits right on the track. And then you need to add some bits and pieces to make your train. So I like using these biscuits, and I've tried using four wheels and it just grips too much and falls off, and I found that if I use cogs then the wheels will run along the track a lot better. So I actually use cogs as the other set of wheels. Then you've got to work out a way of making the wheels turn by themselves just by rolling. So you make an axle maybe between two biscuits, or sometimes it might be better just to do one biscuit. But you can't have it too, you can't put it in the middle really, because if you put it in the middle and you put that on the track, then the biscuit itself actually starts hitting the track. So that looks good, but when you put it on the track, it's going to bump along the middle parts of the track. So I didn't realise this when I was making it, but I thought that looks pretty cool. I think I put the wheels in the lowest holes on the biscuit, and then that works a bit better. Then you've got to add your hub, and the problem with the hub is quite heavy. So I started by placing it in this position, and I was looking at it thinking it's going to be a bit top heavy, but we'll see how we go. And then I added the sensor, and I thought the colour sensor could go right in the middle of the wheels because that's a good spot for it, and then it will see the colours. Oh, I'm going to put some coloured bricks on the track, and when it sees the colours it's going to make some sounds. So the idea here was just to make it nice and strong and secure, and I put a couple of these pink frames on just to make it a bit more solid and balance the weight out a little bit more. And it looks pretty good as it is. And then I thought I'd make it even stronger by adding some of those L-shaped bars and putting them on the ends, make it very strong. I believe that you should always make your vehicles nice and strong and symmetrical, and then they should work better. And I put the touch sensor or force sensor on the end there because that's going to hit a wall. When it hits the wall, it's going to reverse. So we need to plug that in, and I often plug the touch sensor into port B because it reminds me a button can go into port B, button starts with B, and then I've got the ultrasonic sensor on the other end. So I've got three sensors, one at the bottom to see coloured bricks on the track, one's going to see walls at one end, and one's going to bump into walls at the other end. And then I realised when you put the stopper on there and the robot hits it, it's not very secure. So and it didn't hit on a very good angle. So I put these angular pieces on just to make the button sort of face more front on. I've done that with a lot of robots with buttons or force sensors because it works better if the force sensor is level with the surface that it's hitting. And I thought, well, hang on, I need to make this a bit stronger and I need to add some more bricks. So I put a brick on top of the stopper there, and then I thought I'm going to put some coloured bricks in and make a bit more of a track. I secured the end of the track using one of those green plates, and I'm going to make quite a tall wall at this end because the ultrasonic sensor or distance sensor is going to see the wall at that end. So it needs to be quite high because on my robot it is quite high off the ground. So I built a wall so the sensor could see it. Ultrasonic sensors are cool. Don't know if you know this, but they shoot out a little bit of sound, and then it goes out of one eye and back in the other, and that's how it works out how far away it is. Anyway, I connected my iPad, and you can see there by clicking on connect where everything's plugged in, and my motor's plugged into C, so I just had to change that on my code. So when it starts, it's going to set the speed to 75%, and then it's going to start moving. and that's all I'm going to test to start with, just to see it can stay on the track. So as you can see down the bottom, my hub was updating because I hadn't used this iPad with this hub before. It's always good to use the same iPad with the same hub. Then you don't have to wait for it to update every time you use it. So I used, from the events tab, I used this one that says when B is pressed, and I've added, I want to make it reverse when it sees when B is pressed. So make sure your starter motors match when you press play. Whoa, too fast. So let's change the speed to 50% and see how that goes. You always need to press download if you change your code, or play. Oh man, that was too fast as well. So let's try 40%, see if that works on the corners. There must be something wrong with my design, it's too top heavy. So I decided to pull it all apart and see how we go by completely redesigning it. I wanted to have the brick on the top, the hub, not so tall, so I wanted to lie it down so it was sort of along the motor, but then I put it on the motor and it was a bit lopsided. It was tilting too much, so I ended up putting it sort of in that position so it wasn't tilting when it was on the track, and the sensors up the other end should hold it in place a bit better. So once I add the touch sensor or force sensor up that end, you can see that it's a bit more balanced, and I just got to put the ultrasonic sensor or distance sensor on the other end. So one end it's going to bump in the wall, and the other one is going to see the wall. I use these bits that are bent on a bit of an angle to try and straighten up the ultrasonic sensor. Ultrasonic sensors, distance sensors, work better when they are facing front on, because they have to emit a little sound out of one eye and into the other, so it needs to be straight. That seemed to be working pretty well, but then it fell off the track again. So I tried to improve the distance between the wheels, between the cogs, and had to keep adjusting it to make sure that there was a perfect gap between the wheels. And I thought, well, I might, instead of just having it sitting there, I might actually make it swivel a little bit so that it can go around corners a little bit better. So I made this little piece where it swivels by putting one pin in the middle of three, and hopefully as it sort of goes around the track it's going to turn. I mean, real trains don't turn on tracks, but I think it needed it to keep it on there. So I need to increase the size of the button too, so that it would hit the wall more evenly and helps keep it straight when it hits it. And it fell off again. I tell you what, there was more trial and error with this than any other robot I've ever built. So I thought I might try and change the size of the cogs that are acting like wheels. I thought smaller wheels or smaller cogs might work better. And when kids are doing something like this, I mean, they're going to have to do lots of trial and error themselves, because it all comes down to how well it is constructed in relation to the track. And I think that size cog is a bit better, and it looked like it was going to work a little bit better with smaller cogs. So I feel like I started to kick a few goals and that things were working a bit better. But I thought even better, I might put some more cogs, the original ones, on the outside of the track just to help it balance a bit more. And so I gave that a bit of a go, and I thought they could run along the green floor while the rest of the robot ran along the track. But I found that after even a little bit of testing, the extra cogs on the outside actually just caused more problems than it was worth. While doing this, I realised that the wheels, the main wheels, weren't equidistant, so I adjusted them a little bit to make that work a bit better, and hopefully that might have made a difference. And then I thought I'll try different ways of putting the cogs on by using different biscuits in different positions, and maybe they'll work a bit better. And then I found that my sensors are facing the wrong way, so I had to adjust them. And then, so the sensors are now a lot lower, everything's a lot lower to the ground, and it seemed to work a bit better now. It took a lot of trial and error to get this far, and it was pretty good. didn't help having things lying on the track. That caused a bit of problems. So I thought I might try and add the ultrasonic, making that actually work. So you grab a block from the events tab that has the ultrasonic sensor on it, and I change it to centimetres, and I made it when it's closer than 10 centimetres it's going to reverse. So I just duplicated the block that was showing the motor working in one direction and changed it to the opposite direction. You can see that the ultrasonic sensor, if you connect your robot, you can see where everything's plugged in, and it says it's plugged in to port D, so I had to change it to port D on my code. It's always important to check that everything's plugged into the right ports, or that your code represents where everything is plugged in. And then I thought, I don't really like this front wheel still, so I'm going to try and adjust that so that it's a bit more reliable. I found if I took a piece of track and then measured it against the track, it's a bit easier than keep putting it on the established track. So the width there wasn't quite right, so I fiddled with it again, and then I adjusted it, and it looked really good then. That looked like it was going to fit really well. And I put it on there, and then I realised that there was a part that was dragging along the ground and hitting the parts in between the tracks. So that bump there was no good. I had to get rid of that. I ended up putting this little red piece on instead of a grey piece, and then put the axle through the middle of that and get that to run along the track. And again, I had to trial and error and get the width right. Wasn't quite right. The sensor was at the wrong angle, so I had to change that back again. And then I thought, I'm getting close now. Look how low and flat to the ground it is. It's less top heavy, and the wheels seem to be turning all right. Nothing's hitting the track. And I thought, this is looking a lot better now. I guess at this stage I thought I need to add the colour sensor, because the colour sensor is going to see those coloured bricks on the track. So I reckon I've got the train construction pretty good. I don't like giving instructions on how to build a train. I would rather say to a class of kids, build your own train and come up with your own design, because everyone's design will be different, and a lot of them will probably be better than mine. But it seemed to be working pretty good, except it fell off when it goes the other way. So I thought I'd have a bit of a... After lots of testing, I realised I better have a quick look at the train. And I realised that the gap between the wheels is slightly different. The wheels have kind of worked their way out a little bit, and they weren't as close to the motor as I hoped. So, and I also realised that was rubbing a bit there. So I had to check the wheel width, and I had to stop it from rubbing by adding some more pink bars. And then I thought I might add that colour sensor so that we can start making sounds when we hit the right colours. So one of the most important tips is to make sure your wheels are always the same distance, that they don't sort of drift out a bit, and it's good to put some things on the outside of the wheels to secure them. But it's looking pretty good now, and it's going to be fun to add some sound effects. So I added the colour sensor, made it face straight down, and then I got my iPad out, and I thought I need to add some sound. So it's a lot easier just to make separate stacks, because when you press play, it actually runs all the stacks simultaneously. So I have a stack for the colour red. It's plugged into port C. I can check that when it's connected. You can see it automatically puts it in the right port if you connect it before you add the blocks. So it's in port C, and then I'm going to say when it sees a red brick, it's going to make a sound. So you go to Sounds tab, and you choose the top block, and it'll play a cat meow. We don't want a cat meow, we want it to sound like a train. So you can do a bit of a search in the sounds for train sounds. Unfortunately, there's a few there, and I just chose one that looked good to start with, and you can test it by pressing play. It seems pretty good to me. So then you just have to select from cat, you change it to train horn 1. And next time I did it, I grabbed another block from the events tab, and this time I changed the colour to suit the colour bricks I had. So I had a yellow block on the track, so I wanted to make a different sound when it saw yellow, and I duplicated the purple block, and then I changed it to, you go add sound, search for train again, and then pick a different sound. Now I made a little error here. I forgot to actually change it. That's the sound I wanted, which is pretty cool, but I forgot to change it from train horn 1 to that sound, but we'll fix that up in a little bit of time. Then I grabbed another block for the blue blocks, so when it sees blue it makes a different sound. So again, choose a sound and add a sound and search for train and then find a cool train sound, and I like the sound of this one that was going on the tracks. Listen for this one. You can test it. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. And then I made sure I selected it at that time instead of a cat meow. Choose the train track sound. Didn't notice at this stage that I had train horn there twice for 2 of the colours. Anyway, but I pressed play on the iPad and see if it actually works when a colour sensor sees the colours. And the first one it saw, didn't see it. I went, oh man. And then it didn't see it again. I went, oh man. I think it sees this next one though. Yeah, so it saw one of the sounds. I thought, I wonder what the reason is for that. Maybe the sensor's too high, so I thought I might lower the sensor, because sometimes you get better readings if the sensor's closer to the actual colour. So I attach the sensor facing down, make sure the cables aren't getting tangled, and then I press play again, and didn't work. And didn't work. And I thought, oh man, it's just because the bricks. Well, let's just test the bricks. Let's test the bricks. Yeah, that seems to be working. Yeah, it's working. So it's pretty weird. They're working when I put them against them with my hand, but not when they're on the track. So I thought, look, let me watch this. Oh, it's not going over the colour. I need to move the bricks to the outside of the track. It worked, even though it fell off, but it still worked. So the bricks basically need to be to the outside of the track. And I just had to adjust those wheels again because it fell off again. So now it seems like the sounds are working properly. I've got the railway track sound. I've got the whistle sound. And the red one didn't work because the red one needs to be adjusted to be pushed out to the side of the track again. It's pretty, the bricks aren't slightly, the holes aren't slightly bigger, but anyway, it's pretty cool. It seems to be working pretty good now. I set the speed to 30%, I think, to stop it from falling off, and it seems to be working perfectly. Finally, my train is working, seeing the colours, making the sounds, and not falling off. Because the distance, not falling off, it fell off. Now, why did it fall off? Anyway, I thought it might make it interesting to make a sound when it falls off. So I grabbed the block from the events tab when, and I put a green operators block in there. And then inside each of the hexagons, you can have a gyro sensor setting so that you can say when it tilts one way or it tilts the other way, you can play a sound. So I thought that was pretty cool. So I went back to the sounds tab and I picked out a sound after tapping on the cat meow and add sound. And I thought I'd just scroll through them here because it's pretty hard to know what sort of sound to make for a train falling over. And I chose this one. It's quite dramatic. I thought it would be quite cool. So we added that one to it. And you make sure you select it. And now every time it falls over, it should make that sort of sound. I set the speed to 100 there just to make it crash. But anyway, put the speed back to, I think, 50 or 40. And now it's going quite well and making sounds. It's not falling off, and if it does fall off, at least it makes a cool dramatic sound when it does. So basically, I've succeeded. I've made a train that travels along the track using a spike prime kit. It makes cool sounds, but then it falls off. It's going to make a sound. Is it going to make a sound? It's still pretty level, so it's not making the sound yet. Is it going to fall off? Is it going to fall over? Is it going to make the sound? Is it? Yeah, it does. Yes. So it's a pretty cool train. I actually doubled the size of the wheels. Can you see that I've doubled the size of the cogs on the train? So now there's 2 cogs on each side, so that it stayed on the track a little bit better. Because even though it's cool when it makes a sound when it falls off, the goal is not to fall off, eh? And you've got to make sure that sensor can see the colours, so the bricks need to be on the outside of the track. Now it's working beautifully. It's quite satisfying to watch, isn't it? Yeah. The gauge is what messes with the kids the most. So if you're getting kids to do this exercise, you really got to sort out that width between the wheels. Even mine's grinding a bit as it goes around the corners. You can hear it. But it's going pretty well. Yeah, the width between the wheels is the thing that really confuses the kids. So they just need to know they have to keep trial and error and try not to have it too top heavy. Lots of trial and error, not too top heavy. Sensors have to be level. They're working really well, the sensors, no doubt about it. The trickiest thing is to get that design right so it doesn't fall off. If you love these trains, well, I bought some other trains recently. They're called Coating Express and they're awesome. Check out this video I made about the Coating Express. It's a bit easier than trying to make one out of Spike Prime, that's for sure.